6 days of rioting in a Negro section of Los Angeles left behind scenes reminiscent of war-torn cities. More than 100 square blocks were decimated by fire and looters.
In August 1965, the Watts neighborhood of Los Angeles erupted in flames. For 6 days, black residents clashed with police, protesting systemic racism, poverty, and police brutality. 34 lives were lost, and over 1,000 injured. This uprising was not just a riot, it was a rebellion against decades of neglect. Out of these ashes, a new generation would rise, forging identities in a city that had turned its back on them. This is where our story begins. In the fractured heart of South Central Los Angeles, where the Bloods and Crips would emerge not as mere gangs, but as distorted reflections of a community's cry for agency.
Some of the Crips and the Bloods, two of LA County's most vicious gangs.
LA police are getting their orders as they prepare for another assault on street gangs.
Raymond Washington was 12 years old when the Watts riots seared their way into his consciousness. By 15, he had become a street fighter, channeling his rage into a new kind of resistance. Inspired by the Black Panther Party's calls for self-defense and community empowerment, Washington founded the Crips in 1969 alongside Stanley "Tookie" Williams. Their mission: to protect their neighborhoods from racist gangs like the Spook Hunters and a hostile LAPD. The name Crips remains shrouded in myth. Some say it honored members who carried canes. Others claim it stood for community revolution in progress. What's undeniable is their blue bandanas became a symbol of defiance in a city that criminalized blackness. By 1972, the Crips' dominance had turned oppressive. Smaller groups, the Piru Street Boys, Brims, and Athens Park Boys, faced a stark choice: submit or resist. Sylvester Scott and Vincent Owens of the Pirates chose rebellion. They united under a crimson banner, adopting the Bloods' name and red rags as a declaration of independence. "We weren't starting a war," recalls an early member. "We were refusing to disappear." Their initiation rituals, brutal beat-ins and robberies, forged loyalty, but the cost was steep. Families fractured, and playgrounds became battlegrounds. The Bloods' rise was less a revolution than a survival pact in a city that offered no safe harbor.
Because the messages I have received, in writing and otherwise, would indicate that the vast majority of the Los Angeles community do not agree with Dr. King as far as the future of Chief Parker is concerned. And therefore, as much as I regretted appearing to be a bad host, I couldn't accommodate him on this occasion. Thank you.
The LAPD under Chief William Parker didn't police South Central, it occupied it. Parker's hardline tactics transformed neighborhoods into open-air prisons. African Americans were barred from white zones east of Alameda Street, arrested for loitering, or beaten for stepping out of line. Meanwhile, LA's economy crumbled. Factories that once employed black workers fled, replaced by a drug trade that preyed on desperation. By the 1980s, crack cocaine flooded the streets, turning brothers into rivals and mothers into mourners. The LAPD's response? Operation Hammer, mass arrests of black youth, fueling resentment and gang recruitment. The system didn't just fail South Central, it weaponized its despair.
Black folks got tired. They just got tired of discrimination, and the police didn't live in the city. They lived in Simi Valley, Moat Park, or wherever, and they came in and policed at night and went home, and it was total disrespect all over.
April 29th, 1992. The acquittal of the officers who brutalized Rodney King ignited a powder keg. For 72 hours, Bloods and Crips laid down their arms, standing side by side against a common enemy. "We burned down our own neighborhoods," admits a former Blood, "but for once we weren't killing each other." This fragile truce, brokered in prison yards and parking lots, revealed a painful truth. The real war wasn't between red and blue, it was against a system that dehumanized them. Yet when the smoke cleared, the streets remained scarred and the gangs splintered. Hope flickered, but the cycle endured.
Started at a very, very young age. I think he may have started as early as 14 distributing or running drugs for different.
Crack cocaine didn't just addict individuals, it ravaged generations. By the late 1980s, 70% of black children in South Central were born to single mothers. Fathers vanished into prisons or graves, leaving boys to seek mentorship in gang hierarchies. The drug trade offered quick money and quicker deaths. "We sold poison to our own people," confesses a former Crip, his voice breaking. But what choice did we have? The factories were gone. The schools were traps. The police treated us like targets. The streets became a twisted meritocracy. Kill or be killed, prosper or perish. By 2000, 28% of black men in LA County would face incarceration. Prisons became extensions of gang turf, with Crips and Bloods continuing their feud behind bars. The school-to-prison pipeline was no metaphor. Underfunded schools criminalized black youth, suspending them for minor infractions and funneling them into juvenile detention. "They called us super predators," says a former gang interventionist. But they created the monsters. The Crips and Bloods, once neighborhood protectors, became cogs in America's prison industrial complex.
LA is the biggest gang turf than any parts of the United States. We're number one as far as gang.
Today, the streets of South Central tell a story of contradiction and courage. Former enforcers like Bo Taylor, founder of Unity One, broker peace treaties between warring sets. Mothers like Vicky D. Lindsay, who lost 2 sons to gang violence, lead peace walks through neighborhoods once ruled by fear. The Amer I Can Foundation, launched by NFL legend Jim Brown, teaches life skills to at-risk youth, while Akila Sherrill's Reverence Project turns graffiti into community art. Red and blue still stain the streets, but now they color murals that scream, "We are more than our worst days."
Every negative category with the young men that I chose to deal with. Prisons, inner cities. You change that around, you're cost effective. You deal with the predators, they turn their lives around, you can build a culture once again.
The Bloods and Crips didn't just shape LA, they reshaped global culture. NWA's Straight Outta Compton and films like Boys in the Hood brought South Central's pain to mainstream audiences. Rappers like Snoop Dogg, Crip, and The Game, Blood, turned gang colors into fashion statements, while drill music spread their ethos from Chicago to Cape Town. But this influence cuts both ways, glamorizing violence for some, exposing systemic rot for others. "We're not heroes," says a former Blood-turned rapper. "We're survivors with microphones."
Yeah, but in the beginning, it's like the gang is not as violent as they became. The gang was just the gang of the homies, like my friends. We just were a gang that was young and innocent and not knowing. And then as time went on, 13, 14, 15, the neighborhood received drugs and guns that were placed there for some apparent reason.
In 2023, California allocated $50 million to gang intervention programs. A drop in the ocean, but a start. Former gang members now advise policymakers, demanding jobs, not jails. "You can't arrest your way out of this," insists Professor E. Brenda Stevenson. Communities rebuild with urban farms and tech hubs, yet the ghosts of the past linger. The question remains, can a nation confront its role in creating these gangs? Or will it condemn another generation to the same cycle? The Bloods and Crips were born from a city's failure to love its own. Their saga is a mirror, reflecting America's sins and resilience. They embarked as protectors, navigated betrayal, and now stand at the edge of redemption. As the sun sets on these streets, remember, their story is ours. A testament to the cost of neglect, a warning against indifference, and a plea to listen to the whispers of the lost, the cries of the wounded, and the dreams of the next generation. Thank you for bearing witness to this transformative journey. If these stories moved you, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay connected. The fight for justice is never finished. It's waiting for us to continue.